Greetings, everybody. This is Christopher Messina coming at you from the Messy Time Studios on sunny, still free Florida's East Coast. I'm delighted to be visited today, the 30th of January, 2023, by Mike West, who is coming to us from, where are you, Mike?
I'm in Navarre, Florida, which is it's settled. It's kind of nestled between Pensacola and Destin, Florida.
Still the last free state in the nation, irrespective of what part of it. All right, well done. And I invited you here today. Thanks so much for taking the time to come.
All right, my pleasure.
Mike and I actually have the pleasure of serving together on the Combat Control Foundation Board of Directors, which is just great. And actually, Mike, unlike me, a civilian volunteer for the board, was a combat controller. So maybe I'll kick off there. I mean, what were your motivations for joining the board? And maybe you could tell us a little bit about your Air Force experience and kind of what the combat controllers are, since a lot of people don't know who they are.
Yeah, so just to kind of the big pictures, I was in the Air Force 30 years, very proudly served. I enjoyed serving. You know, there's always other opportunities that maybe I could have ventured off into, but I really enjoyed one, serving in the Air Force, but then two, I was a part of this group that I call family, and that was called Combat Control. The day I signed up for Combat Control and made it through some training, man, I gained a family. And but I'll get back to that. But I signed up for the Air Force. I had my first recruiter was my grandfather. I had two grandfathers, both served, one in the Navy, one in the Air Force. I spent most of my time with the one in the Air Force, and he had a lot of influence on me. My summers were with him. He's a great American, great person to hang out with. And, he lived on a lake and I loved water. And so I get to hang out with him and my grandmother quite often, but occasionally he'd take me up to Little Rock Air Force Base. I grew up in a place called Hot Springs, Arkansas. It's a nice town. It's where he retired from. And occasionally we would go to Little Rock Air Force Base, and he would show me around and say, "Hey, how cool is this?" And he'd take me in the officers' chow hall, and he would look at these guys. They're sharp and they're happy, and he'd always kind of point out what it was like on the base. But he was my first recruiter, so that's how I ended up Air Force. Now, how I ended up.
Well, if your other grandfather had a better lake, would you have gone Navy, you think? Or was the persuasiveness of the surrounding?
Well, it just made it nice. I mean, you're a young kid growing up, and you get, and it wasn't too far from where I live, but to spend your summer on the lake is the best.
Oh God, yeah.
If it's hot, you're in the water. If it's nice, you're in the water swimming. It doesn't matter. I was always swimming, and it made me a really good swimmer. And I could breath hold like no tomorrow, and which helped
during combat control training, as we saw on Lackland last week. Those kids,
that's right,
screaming at them in the water.
That's right. Well, but I spent so much time. But my couple of buddies of mine, right before I joined the Air Force, they took me actually scuba diving, and well, this is pretty cool, and I really loved it. And after a while, like, this is the best thing ever. I love the water already from growing up in the water. Next thing you know, I'm scuba diving. Now I'm breathing under the water. I'm like, wow, this is really neat. Well, I went to the Air Force recruiter. I'll never forget it. He was a great guy, the recruiter, and he's like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Man, I already know." I go, "I want to scuba dive," and he's like, "You're in the wrong office, son." They're like,
we go up.
Yeah, you're in the wrong office. Like, but the neat thing is they searched around and they found this job, and come to combat control. Well, come to find out there's two jobs at scuba dive in the Air Force: combat control and also pararescue. But he showed me combat control, and on there, one of my options I actually had been thinking about was air traffic control school. And I'm like,
right,
this has got my name written all over it. Like, and next thing you know, I'm being shipped off to basic training to be a combat controller. But what I did know was I was going to be trying out with a bunch of other guys. It wasn't guaranteed, although they had it on my rep, combat control, but that was just a guarantee to try out. And if I didn't make it, I was going to be the needs of the Air Force,
right?
Whatever they needed. So there's a little incentive behind it. But I was heading off to Air Force to try out for combat control.
And that's an important distinction for the special units that you apply for. you got to pass into it, right? You got to qualify, you got to do it. If you don't get your assignment, it's not like, well, it was fun, see you. No, you're still giving them the whatever years you signed up for.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I'd signed up for 4 years, and I could have been anything, that other people weren't signing up for, maybe, driving a bus, or, just cook, or
Right.
whatever it was, that they needed. But here I show up, I go through basic training, and just down the road from basic training is where we're all told to go meet up at. And I get there, and there's a bunch of other kids. They're all there to try out. And I'm like, oh boy. And I just kept learning more and learning more. Next thing you know, it's an 8-week selection at the time. It's changed a little bit, but it's an 8-week selection. And it isn't until the end of this that you're a combat control trainee. And then, if you get selected out of this 8 weeks, then you're going to go through a 2-year pipeline where you're going to go through all these hardcore schools and do all this training. But they have to. This initial training was one to select you, but also to prepare you, as we saw these guys doing, but to prepare you for all these other hardcore schools. They're essentially some of the hardest in the DoD.
And what is the progression? You can quickly give an iteration for my listeners who aren't quite aware of how intensively the U.S. government investing you guys.
So yeah, so our very first one was going to a special forces dive school right off the bat. So we graduate there, which I started with. I had 120 in my class, and we graduated 14. Oof. Out of this. So the 14 of us next we're going special forces dive school. And then from there, we go off to we went to Air Force survival school, which isn't really that hard, but it's, just there's a number of schools all back to back to back. So we go to SEER school. Now we're going to U.S. Army parachute training. We're going to learn to jump rounds, 800 feet out of a C-130, Fort Benning, Georgia. And then follow there, we went to Air Traffic Control School, Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi, 3 months and a little bit of change. We're going through Air Traffic Control School with other Air Force air traffic controllers, which isn't an easy school. It's, they throw a lot of stress, they're going to put a lot of airplanes at you. You got to be able to, sequence them, remember call signs, and then, land them safely. It was all a similar environment.
And so this is, just not to interrupt, but this is the special role that combat controls in the modern battlefield that most people don't get. Like, you see all these, tape, but it never occurred to me until I really began to understand combat control was that someone's guiding all those planes, right? And that someone is on the battlefield. They're not backwards somewhere. They're right up front. And the motto is first there, right? That's the motto of the CCT.
That's right. I mean, air traffic control is our bread and butter. That's that's our core skill, because we have a group of guys that can go into a forward environment, no matter what that environment may be, that environment may be an old runway that is now ours, so to speak, or it may be a highway. It could be anywhere that we need to start landing airplanes safely, putting them on the ground, either dropping off cargo, people, whatever, rolling stock, whatever you could name it, getting them there, getting them out, and just start moving them in. And a good scenario that I can use is Haiti. Haiti had a big earthquake 12 years ago. 12 years ago, everything went down, including the tower, the air traffic control tower. They needed relief help now. Yeah. Well, our guys were immediately poised and ready. They're ready to jump in and then check out the runway. They ended up being able to land the C-130, but our guys got in there. No taxiways. It was just one single runway. But they set up it was essentially a card table, the radios, started landing airplanes with no taxiway. They started landing airplanes. They landed 2,000 airplanes in 2 weeks.
That's phenomenal.
Safely. I mean, they were showing up from China. They were showing up from everywhere. We want to help. There was a lot of, it was all over the news. Oh, hey, Haiti's going through a lot. We're ready to help out. But it was our guys that just went in there. But that's what we're designed to do. And it may be a humanitarian, but it also, it could be other environments. Sure. But you have a group of guys.
All improvised. You don't know what you get until you get there.
Yeah.
No infrastructure.
But we're also trained to work with any team around the world. If we're assigned to any special forces any coalition, joint, it doesn't matter, but we can be assigned to them. And and these guys, sometimes, these are high speed guys. They expect you to, hold your own. And that's what we're ready for. So it's pretty exciting. But that air traffic control is our bread and butter.
And so sorry, we circle back that process of elimination where you got 14 guys that came out of special forces dive school.
Yeah.
That's a serious winnowing process. What is that, like 9% retention or something?
Yeah, and half of those were pararescuemen and half of them were combat controllers. Yeah, but it's you're getting down to the 10% rule. I think that time might be 12, 14, but it's usually around 10% on each class. And they've changed things a little bit since then. They're trying to get guys more ready ahead of time.
Yeah.
So now that there's a little different process, they're actually start training guys before they even leave the basic training, what to expect. So when they leave basic training, they're at a little bit better fitness. Ours was, man, you got 2 tries and that's it. Each week it progressed harder and harder in that first 8-week course, harder and harder and harder. Next thing we had to graduate. We had to run 6 miles in 6-minute miles in 36 minutes. So,
Jesus.
which is just, but each week it got harder and harder.
Wow.
You can imagine, like it's just like, oh my gosh, like each week you're like, oh man, we just made that 4 miles, in 6 minutes. Like that was like, but the next week you're running 5 miles. I was like, oh my gosh, like, but it was just continue. Either, your body could either, if your body had a little hiccup, that made it hard too. Like if you got hurt, you get shin splints, which we were always getting. Like it was just anything. You get sick, that sets you back, and you get set back so many times.
So a candidate during this process can tap out or be pushed out, right? I mean,
that's right.
Either one.
And we spent a lot of time in the water. And here I am. I'm swimming. I'm doing a lot of breath holds, like stuff I had to do. Stuff I not had to do, but stuff I was doing growing up at my grandparents' house on a lake. I'm like,
Right.
Like it was, and that was one of our big hurdles for a lot of young guys. Is like, man, we spent a lot of time in the water. And most guys can get in shape. They can get in shape running. They can get in shape doing so many push-ups, sit-ups. But the water psychological part was tough.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, it was very, very tough. Some of the best, we had some of the best, including my class. We had some really good swimmers, but man, it could get to you sometimes. And so we were always watching people in the pool, similar to what you and I did a week ago. We're watching people in the pool, but the pool, and we didn't see all of it, but the pool was a very stressful point for a lot. And we'd watch guys every day get out of the pool and say, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm
sure, because the natural mammalian reaction to the sensation of drowning is sheer panic, right? So that's part of what is most of this mental. I mean, conditioning yourself to overcome that, to feel it coming on and stop it. Is that what are the characteristics of the guys who successfully get through it versus those who are potentially in better physical condition at the outset?
Well, I can tell you the end state was at the level of confidence in the water was unbelievable. And I found myself in a couple of those situations throughout my career where, one time I was jumping into the ocean, parachuting into the ocean. It was dark. There was a sea level, and I'm going up and down with a parachute, and there's lines around me, and I could have panicked easily. I felt comfortable. There's another time I was under a helicopter. It was it's called an MH-53. It's a big helicopter, produces a lot of downwash, and I'm off Guam, and I'm doing work under this helicopter, and I felt comfortable. And I had another guy with me. He was actually our commander or director of operations, either one or two of my unit at the time. He was both, and I can't remember which position he had at the time. But anyway, I think he was number 2 maybe, but anyway, not important. But anyway, he's with me, and his confidence, maybe not the highest. My confidence was really good. But we're in this big helicopter. It's dark again. Helicopters producing rotor wash like no tomorrow. If you weren't careful, if you got just outside this little cone underneath it, you were gone. It'll push you out to nowhere land. And but I was under there. I'm doing work. We're riding this penetrator. It's lifts you up out of the water into the helicopter. And I'm looking at him and he is getting scared. But I was able to swim over to him. I grab him, I pull him back a little bit. I'm like, hey, it's all good. I went over, grabbed a hoist, get him hooked up. I get in, I get hooked up, and I get pulled. And I'm kind of look back at the situation like I can start seeing some of this training kick in and not even think about it.
Right.
And there were some other ones where you just felt very, very comfortable. Time I was training students and I'm underneath doing all this stuff, helping them out, but I just felt very comfortable. And I think a lot of that goes back to that first, that initial training, which we still do. We spend a lot of time. It just makes you super comfortable. Another part of our job is rescue. We help out a lot of our pararescue teammates.
Right. So there you're in often hostile situations. You're dealing with injured people you need to get to rapidly. They themselves are potentially panicking, right? As every lifeguard knows, the most dangerous thing in the world is coming at a drowning person from the wrong direction. Because you've got all that going. And
Yep.
that is that just what that constant training that we put so much into so that you get past all that stress and get through it, right?
That's right. Yeah. All that training. I mean, I could go onto a lot of different brackets of training, but we're just talking about the one, but you put it, especially in your training environment, and you can't try to keep it as safe as possible, but you just keep putting it, you take it another notch, still while controlled, like what we saw in the pool, lots of instructors, lots of people watching. We got people that are, but it just keep pushing and pushing, pushing. And then when you actually get in that environment, you're like, man, this is what it's like. Which, I've had moments even in Afghanistan, where it was like my training took me to a level where I've got this, I've been training for this. I'm ready. And so, it's a great feeling, especially afterwards, you reflect back on it and you're like, okay. And then you maybe even try to help train guys to that same, hey, there's all this stuff happening. It's all this stuff going on. And when you have to, do your job, you're ready for it.
Is that a major differentiator between especially the quality of the special operations forces that we have in the US versus say the nonsense we're watching with the bumbling Russians who are getting themselves shot daily by housewives with Mausers? I mean, is that the difference? Is that complete lack of training? And how does that differ very much from what special operations go through as opposed to if you were an airman or if you were infantryman in the Army? They're significantly different?
So that's a good question. I could speculate. I wish I could see some of their, watch from inside, and I could speculate. The very first thing I'm going to bring up is leadership. It's such a huge part of it. We talk about it all the time. Leadership in the military is talked about. My whole career was talked about. I'm not a big fan of, people that talk about it. These are the 4 pillars of leadership. I'm not a big fan of any of that. I hear a lot of it. I'm a big fan of those that demonstrate leadership and have done it, and
Right.
they speak from experience. So when I talk about leadership, it's being able, leadership, one, communication allows that information to flow down and flow back up. And I don't know if that's happening. When you look at other services, when we look at, like what you're talking about with the Russians, I don't know if that's really happening. I'm going to guess it isn't, but there's a lack of that communication, which helps because including if you got guys at the bottom going, this is how we could do this better. And combat controllers are really good about it. They're like, and but they're told like, but they got a lot of smart young guys who say, I think we could do a little better. And a good leader will listen and maybe even incorporate it. And we have a lot of guys doing that. And then that leadership on the top allows those young guys to be open communicators and give them resources to make them better training, and maybe those resources and, it's the better weapons, it's the better trucks. For our combat controller, our biggest weapon is our radio. And I kept seeing that radio my whole career get better and better and better, which a good radio and a combat controller is deadly. Like
Yes.
we are like, we're bringing, you got a combat controller. Another part of our job is, the close air support. So you got a combat controller with a radio and all these airplanes that are above us and in an environment, man, we are deadly. And
And in practical terms, that means you're talking about bombers for potentially disparate services, 10,000 feet up in the air, flying at the speeds they fly at, and you're placing, bombs 2 football fields away from where your troops are. And that kind of accuracy is what you're talking about when you said close air support.
well, you can talk about a lot closer with a lot of different airplanes.
Oof.
And I meant, when I talk about joint and coalition, joint being, DOD, and then coalition being everybody else. And then you start looking at, like Afghanistan, we've got a lot of coalition support. We've got a lot of joint support. That joint, we could talk all day about, and you got a guy who is with this special forces team, and we get attached to, these special forces teams, whether it be an American or even coalition. But if you got a guy who's attached to them with a radio, he's bringing in everything that is supporting up in the air potentially. This guy knows how to talk to him. He knows how to reach out to him. He knows maybe even their capabilities. He knows, even including their capabilities, he knows how to use them safely, which is very important. And that's where we get a lot of trust in our teammates. Here I was an Air Force guy. I show up, I'm getting attached to a special forces team. And these guys are essentially alpha types. They're alpha types. They're guys who are kind of, they're very proud of what they do. They're very proud of what they can shoot. We'll call them door kickers and shooters. They know how to go in and just cause some problems. And I love working with them. Sometimes there's some guys that are just very impressive. But then you get a guy who's attached to them. At first, they're looking at you like, oh, Air Force guy. Like,
he's going to be dead weight on this mission.
Like Air Force, like they don't really have a whole lot of respect for Air Force most of the time. But you get assigned to them. But and their job is all right. Here's our task. But then they realize, after the first time you become we call it troops in contact, you're getting shot at. They they have a role. They can shoot back. But then this Air Force guy can do a lot more damage.
Clear the table in a minute.
Our lives. What's that?
You clear the table in a minute, done correctly.
Yes. Well, one we have there. I mean, our assets are above us are unbelievable. I'm very, very proud to say they're unbelievable, and I love being on this side of the fence with our assets. And I hope we continue to invest in them. But we have the ability to look and see what's shooting at us. Maybe even confirm that is the person, and confirm sometimes where they're at and what's going on, and keep our friendly forces on to their missions. And I love it. I love that ability. I love the support, and we just bring that, and we can help them out. I mean, we can see what's going on, and we'll start being like, hey, here's what's happening. They're like, what? This guy, what's happening? What's going? Hey, here's what they're doing. Here's where they're moving. And it's just great. And I've been on that side of it. So I really, I'm very proud of the support we get and what we can do. But you got this Air Force guy who can talk to all of it, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this guy's a great asset.
And out of nowhere, hellfire comes.
If we need to.
Yeah.
We need to.
I love the story of the very beginning of the Afghan campaign, where after September 11th, with grabbing Bagram Air Force Base, where both sides of Northern Alliance and the Taliban were dug in for years. It's like World War I across the trench, and a bunch of Rangers of the combat controller cleared it. In the afternoon, and forever won the love of the Northern Alliance, at least till it all fell apart.
Yeah, I mean, but you quickly establish that rapport once they see what you can do. And I one time had a discussion with the team leader. I go, your job is to keep me alive. This is if we get into troops in contact, we start getting shot. I go, your job is to keep me alive for the first 15 minutes, and then I take over. He's like, what? He quickly realized what that meant.
How true that was, right?
But it's a part, where you can, you can support the ground mission, you can support, and you can just ensure that everybody, comes home as best you can. So it's great. It's great for us. It's great for my job. So
yeah. And that sounds like a very exciting, phenomenal career. And one thing I've come to realize in all my discussions with everyone that the foundation is helping, or everyone's helping out, as you said, the family that you got the day you finished training or entered training is that dedication to service in a way that, frankly, having spent most of my time in the private sector, has somewhat been lost in the civilian world. And I see often a yawning gap between what those friends of mine who spent time, active military, and those who have not. Just a very different view of the world. And that may always have been true, but I'm not sure. I mean, it seemed like certainly when there was a draft in World War I and II, everybody went. So there was no gap. But having come out the other side, had a career there, and now working with the foundation and helping out those vets who are struggling or whose families need help. How do you perceive that divide in the world, or is it different when you're out talking to folks about supporting the foundation? Is there a marked difference between the civilian populations that have very little contact with the military at all versus those that do? Or is that only a difference I'm seeing because I spent some time in New York, for example?
I think, yeah, there can be, depending on where you go in the country and stuff. But what we see in our foundation is now I'm part of the Combat Control Foundation. Helped start it up, not that long ago. And but what we see a lot of people that want to help us, and they've been, you get a lot of people that observe from the outside, but they kind of are echoing those words. How can I help in a way? What can I do? How can I help? And we tell them stories, of some of our Gold Star families, of some of our wounded, and some of our killed in action. Sometimes, just family is an important message, and what we're doing to take care of them. I talked about the family I gained when I joined Combat Control, but it's that, it's still there. I have a big heart for any of our fallen. A lot of them were my teammates. At first, my best friend was, he was killed March 2002, and his name is John Chapman. And that was really the first time. I'd had some killed in training, very small, and those, a couple times before that. But the John Chapman part really kind of struck me. I knew his girls. He had one daughter born just 3 days off from my daughter in the same hospital. He went to visit him, and then afterwards he came back to visit me. But I knew his girls. They were little, and I was just sick to my stomach. But I kept saying, how can I help? And later, after I continued to serve it, and then after I retired, I luckily became part of the Combat Control Association, which in turn we started the foundation, because we realized that's how we can help. And I was
in terms of formalizing and stabilizing an income.
Formalizing, and you start getting the 501c3, which an association is, a C19, but the 501c3 means a lot to people and companies. It means something to companies and stuff. And but it was our way of giving back. It was our way of giving back. And but I've got a lot after John Chapman. There was just continually teammates, some, not always killed in action. Some are just, they were scars, not always physical scars, sometimes emotional scars, but we can give back. We can keep giving back, but we're there to throw out a hand and help them if needed. And sometimes it may even be a family member. We can help out. We've got a lot of great resources around the DoD that are provided, but sometimes there's gaps that are not in, that somebody's like, oh, we can't cover that. We can't cover that. That's where we'll fill in as well. We'll try to cover in. We also have, we can also help out if, somebody may not want to raise their hand. If they're having emotional scars, they may not want to raise it while they're in, because they're kind of worried about implications of, hey, I've got some stress, I've got some stuff going on, but I need some help. Well, we'll do what we can to help. Whether it's help them, help them, point them to the right direction or wherever it may be. And we have a lot of guys within the association and foundation that, can have resources to give out. Maybe it's just, have you looked at this option or have you looked at this option? So we're there, whatever it may be. We're there to help, throw that hand out, help them out. And but that's what I like about the civilian sector is they're all constantly going, what else can I do to help out? Well, all right, well, here's our foundation. This is what we do. And we would love for you to help support us. And they're just like, heck yeah, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I find it very, like, I get almost like, I want anybody helping us out. I almost want to be like, man, you're like your friend for life. Like I love, a lot of the people that have helped us out, including our long-term donors. Like it means a lot to me, especially when I go back and look at, some of the family members or whatever it may be, like they're helping, them helping us is us helping the rest of the community.
That it is an insanely valuable thing, and so much of it until you're actually heavily involved, which is what I discovered, right? And I want to touch back on something that you alluded to, but I think most people don't quite understand what it means and how important it is. If you're active duty and you go for psychological counseling or you go for anything, now in theory, all that's protected under law, right? You're not allowed to be discriminated against, but in reality, any commander has the ability to say, to wonder, is this guy fit for duty? Is he just, for the very nature of the fact that he's seeking help, which should be encouraged, not discouraged, can often have real world negative implications for your career, which is not surprising. We see it in the private sector all the time, right? In theory, people when asked say, mental health, you don't fire someone for being incompetent because they got lung cancer, right? But if you find out they're seeing a psychiatrist six times a week and they've got an alcohol problem, then suddenly that's like still an okay prejudice because you don't have to say anything about it. I say it, but so having the association there to provide resources in situations like that can be enormously helpful. And then there's just myriad problems come up when someone's injured or killed in action. There's fiscal monetary stress on top of everything else, right? So helping to alleviate that is an insanely powerful mission that the taxpayers are really good at sending people into harm's way. They're not really very good at all, in my experience, of picking up the pieces that come out afterwards.
Yeah, well, they've gotten really better. I can admit, like, you're right. At one time, it was, to find let's just say a psychologist on base or anywhere, like it was, and then you didn't know them. So when you don't know somebody, you don't trust them. Just going back to the Air Force guy with a bunch of SF guys, you really don't trust them. And you're like, oh man, like I'm not going to go see, you could, even if you got pointed that way, you're going to figure out what words you can say to get away from that environment. But one of the things they've been doing, and this goes back to General McCraven. He started figuring out ways. He's like, man, we need to put some of these health specialists in the units down to like the operator level, not headquarter units, not like he wanted them. At first, there was no funding for it, but he's like, I want them in the units. And he figured out ways. He almost got in a little trouble with Congress because, he took some money, he said he was going to use for this, but it was brilliant. In my opinion,
I like the idea, just as an aside, of anyone in Congress getting upset because someone's wasting money. I find that phenomenally funny.
Yeah. I think they first oh boy, let's, let's throw a fit. But I think when they realized what he was doing, it quickly went away. But next thing you know, we started getting in our units, we've got a psychologist that's walking around. Hey, hey, Jim, hey, Billy, wow, like this is like weird. Like I've never seen one my whole time in the my Air Force. Now I have one assigned to my unit.
Right.
And then we have a licensed clinical social worker that's there to help out, maybe even with the families, like just what if the family's having stress while so-and-so has gone on deployment, which we're going on a lot of deployments. We had other liaisons, clinical liaisons helping out. We even had on the physical side, we had a physical therapist that was, there to kind of assist with guys. So we started seeing the mind and body being taken care of. And these were people that what I really, really liked about it, like guys were starting, and these are alpha type guys. These are guys who are like, man, I can bench press 300 pounds 10 times in a row and then get up and go for a run. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it.
Yep.
But these guys all of a sudden were warming up, and they were knowing each other by names. They felt comfortable with them. And don't get me wrong, guys will go see them, but sometimes they're worried about how much they can. You're right. Like they're not, they'd hate for something to go to the commander, and next thing you know, he's like, I don't want you to have a weapon anymore. And they're like, what? I just wanted to talk about, they're still kind of afraid of that.
Yeah.
A lot of guys are, maybe they have something kind of lingering. They saw something, one time they saw a guy, they saw, somebody die or something that's happened. I mean, it could even been a road accident, which has happened, that just something traumatic happened, and you just want to talk to somebody about it. Like, is this normal to, to be thinking about? Is it normal? They just help them kind of relate. I mean, we even had a chaplain that was assigned to the unit. Like, he's coming around, hanging out with the guys, and just if they wanted somebody to talk to, they were there. But if guys didn't feel comfortable, there's a point where they want to, I need to talk about something else, or, I've got something else. Well, we'll help them out. Maybe we can help them point to some other resources to think about, and we'll gladly do that. But it is great to see the units, and I loved having, the psychologists, whoever they were, and I saw a variety of them, but they did a really good job. And they also formed a network where if they did have somebody take a knee, so to speak, they had someone take a knee, they would all work together to go, hey, what do you think? And what, I saw all the communication going, all the other units, they're just kind of comparing notes. What do you think? Hey, what do you think? Which I thought was awesome. Like, they're just, hey, I know we can do this. Hey, let's do this. So I just really love that part.
That's really interesting. Do you think, assuming, more, assuming we don't plop back down into another Afghanistan anytime soon, do you think all that is clearly a legacy of 20 years of active engagement, right? Of that just never ending war theater, that drove that need. Everything goes in cycles and pendulums, right? Do you think that will eventually begin to atrophy as there are no active theaters or of that magnitude, of that constant magnitude to be going to? Or is the very nature of special operations such that there's always some deployment somewhere, even though there's not a war going on? I'm just curious, do you think that development will be a passing fad as overall hostilities fade, or it will continue as a core part of the budget?
That's a great question. I know what I hope. If I haven't hinted to the answer already, I know what I hope. There's a lot of lessons learned from any deployment. A good, and you could even argue with a 20-year deployment, man, we learned a lot, if not made ourselves one of the most lethal forces in the world, without a doubt. People look at it from one angle, I look at it from another, including with the equipment my guys are wearing, their tactics, their vehicles, even our ability to get out of town, our ability to get somewhere, get it going. Like, we have people that are really good at it right now. I mean, really good at it. Whatever level you want to look at, if something kicks off. So your question, I hope not. I hope we never back up any. We've been moving forward. We've got a lot of things going on. There's always something that could kick up. We're always staring at our adversaries around the world, no matter who they are. And we always know that any of that could get just a little hiccup. We see it every once in a while, a little hiccup, and we're back into this again.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from a personal note, what I really love too is, like, the guys are ready. There's guys that almost it's kind of a weird little post maybe deployment, but they kind of they're going to miss deployments in a way.
Oh, God, the number of guys that tell me they miss the juice and the rush. I mean, I was talking to a friend at Southcom a few years ago, and he was, coming up on retirement. He'd been a tank commander, so it wasn't special ops, but and he was really debating. He was asking me about the private sector and really thinking he'd been in for 18, 19 years, I think. And he was back and forth, and I spent hours talking to him because he was curious about the private sector, right? So that was mainly where I could be helpful. So
Yeah.
but he called me and they gave him a star, and he's like, they don't let me, with this, as far as I understand, they're not going to let me drive a tank through a building in the civilian sector, and I miss the juice. And I was like, all right, fair enough. He's like, I know that's crazy. I'm 45 and I like combat. I was like, I got no judgment. I hope you do, because you're doing it. So is that a big driving factor, especially in a self-selected group like Special Forces?
Yeah, they are. I mean, you train for it. It's just like anybody. You train for something, you're ready to execute it, no matter what it is. And I'm not talking about, so much killing people. It's just you're ready to go do something. You want to be out. You want to go. And I mean, if it's a humanitarian or anything, they're ready to go execute anything. Which is, I don't think you could ask for a better force. And then we get at that with a lot of our special operations forces. They're ready to execute. They're ready to do whatever you need to do in a minute's notice. Like they'll pack up, give hugs, byes to the families, and they'll be gone. Like they just enjoy it. There is maybe a certain adrenaline thrill, but they want to execute and then perform, at the best of their ability. But you're just training for it. You're ready for it. Here I am. Send me.
That's awesome. Well, it's delightful that in a nation of the size of ours, we still have that. So to wrap up, Kevin, are there any sort of guiding thoughts you would give to some young person who is thinking this is a potential career option I go for? I mean, what do you say to a 18, 19-year-old who's, full of piss of vinegar and wants to go get it on? Like, what thoughts do you give for them? Do you have any?
The biggest thing is, and it doesn't matter what it is, chase your dreams, set some goals, figure out what it is. This was one of my dreams when they showed it to me. This was one of my goals. I set my mind to it. I was determined. I wasn't going to quit. I wanted to be a combat controller, and I gained a lot of people. What I tell a lot of people though is, who do you want to be around? That's where you need to be. I was very fortunate. I was surrounded by a bunch of teammates that were guys that I inspired to be, that I wanted to be, that I wanted to be around, that I want to do things with. And 30 years later, I'm retiring as one of them. And I could not have been more honored to serve like you and I. Some of the guys that we were around this past week, those are guys, a lot of those guys in the room are guys that were, I'm teammates for life.
Yeah.
Now we continue to serve. We not only did we serve, now we continue to serve for our community. And so it's just a great opportunity, but it's where you want to be and who do you want to be around?
Oh, it's huge. I gotta say, I'm enormously honored and privileged to be able to help out, right, in whatever way I can, whether it's money or doing whatever else we do with the foundation. It's especially having lived through September 11th, and that being the third time Islamic terrorists tried to kill me with a bomb. Yeah, I'm just delighted you guys do what you do. Right. I mean, it's phenomenal, and any assistance that can be provided on the back end, it's an honor. What are the last thoughts? I don't know. Do you have any? Did I miss anything? What would be thing you'd like to spread awareness the most of someone who's not really aware of all the work that goes into helping out the various vet communities? So
yeah, I do want to throw that one last plug. Combat Control Foundation, 501c3. If you're looking, you want to help people, we're there. We only have a handful on our staff. Your money is going to go toward helping others, helping families, helping our injured, helping our gold stars. We have educational programs that we help kids with as well. So please look our way if you're wanting to donate, or even if you're wanting to maybe help in a bigger picture, maybe even have some type of event or a gala where you want to bring us in, and we more than happy to work with you and maybe help raise money for our guys, and every one of them appreciate it, and I appreciate it as much as you do, Chris. I appreciate your help with our foundation. We're determined to be one of the best foundations in the country, and we have some of the greatest people in the world. And so I'm just honored to be part of it.
Amen. And to be real specific, Mike's talking to you, all you golf club members and all you shooting club members and all you sailing club members. You can have an event, you can have an auction, you can raise money. It doesn't take a lot of effort. We're happy to help out. So call us. I'll leave the link below. But anyway, Mike, been a real pleasure and honor. Thanks so much. And we'll sign off here. Final word. We're gonna do the final word to our guests. Usually I say something snarky about the media, but I'm gonna let it slide today.
No, I was honored to serve. I'm honored to be part of this country, and if needed, I would, if asked, I'd put the uniform on again and continue serving. But that's okay. I'm serving in another capacity, as I mentioned. But thanks for having me, Chris. And again, thanks for your help with our foundation. And I look forward to anybody that wants to help with the foundation as well. So appreciate it.
Amen.
Learn what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it matters. Bitcoin 101, your ultimate guide to the fundamentals of blockchain.